The planet of Xyrith had always been harsh. Its skies were filled with dust storms, and its cities were fragile, built from a mix of metal and stone. The alien people who lived there, the Eliari, were strong but not invincible. Today, their strength would be tested in a way they never imagined. In the narrow alleys of the capital city, a young Eliari mother named Vela crouched beside a cracked wall. Her body shook, not from the cold wind that cut through the city, but from pain. She had given birth hours ago, alone in the shelter of a collapsed building. Her babies were tiny, no larger than the palms of her hands. She tried to feed them, but they were weak. Every breath they took was shallow, every movement fragile. She knew deep inside that they might not survive. Vela's mate, Kieran, paced nearby, his claws scraping the dusty floor. His eyes darted to the skyline where raider ships hovered like dark birds, circling and waiting. These raiders had destroyed countless Eliari homes and stolen many lives. The city's defenses were weak, and most of the Eliari soldiers had already fallen in the first wave of attack. Kieran looked at Vela, desperation in his eyes. They won't make it," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. Vela shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I have to try," she said. She cupped one of the tiny babies in her hands. Its skin was pale, almost transparent, and its breathing irregular. She murmured softly to it, hoping her voice could bring life where her touch alone could not. But just then, a sudden roar filled the air. The raiders had landed closer than anyone expected. Sparks and explosions lit up the dark streets. Vela flinched. Kieran grabbed her arm. "We have to move," he said urgently. But Vela refused. She could not leave her children behind. And then, in the middle of the chaos, they saw him. The human came without warning. He was tall, strong, and calm, moving through the ruins as if the danger around him did not exist. His uniform was simple but equipped with strange technology that shimmered faintly in the dust-filled light. He carried no visible weapon, yet there was a sense of power and control about him that made the raiders hesitate. Vela and Kieran froze, unsure what to make of this stranger. The humans were legends among the Eliari, beings from the stars who could survive impossible dangers, but few had ever seen one in person. And yet here he was, stepping forward, his gaze focused not on the raiders above, but on the babies trembling in Vela's arms. Without hesitation, the human knelt beside her. He spoke softly, his voice calm and even. "Let me help." Vela's first instinct was to pull back. She had learned to fear outsiders. But something in his tone, something in the way he reached toward her without aggression, made her pause. Kieran stepped forward cautiously. Are they dead?" Kieran asked. The human shook his head gently. "No, they are alive, but very weak. They need warmth and care right now. I can help them." He took the babies in his hands. They were so small and fragile that even Kieran gasped. The human held them close to his chest, his arms forming a protective cradle. He adjusted the strange devices on his suit, and a soft warmth spread from him into the infants. Their chests, barely rising before, began to move more steadily. Vela's eyes widened. She had expected death, as every mother on this planet had feared for her children when the raiders came. But these babies, her babies, were breathing. They were alive, and in the arms of this human, they seemed safe for the first time. The raiders fired from above, their weapons sparking against the ruins, but the human did not flinch. He moved like water, avoiding the blasts with calm precision. His focus never left the children. Vela and Kieran watched in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The human's steady presence and warmth kept the babies alive. He whispered softly to them, words they could not understand, yet somehow they calmed under his voice. Their tiny fingers twitched, their eyes fluttered open briefly. and for the first time since birth, they seemed at peace. Then the raiders landed closer. Vela's heart raced. She knew the human could not hold them forever. But instead of panic, she saw something remarkable. The human scanned the surroundings and then made a decision. He would carry the babies to safety, no matter the danger. "Follow me," he said simply. There was no fear in his voice, only certainty. Vela and Kieran exchanged a glance, unsure if they dared trust him. But seeing their children alive and calm in his arms, they nodded. Together, the three of them began moving through the shattered city. The human led the way, ducking under debris, jumping over broken walls, and avoiding raider patrols as if he knew every step before it happened. At one point, a group of raiders blocked their path. Kieran froze, unsure what to do. But the human acted without hesitation. He extended his hand, and a strange pulse of energy shot out, throwing the raiders back without harming them seriously. Vela gasped. What is that?" "It is a way to stop them, just enough to move," the human replied. His voice remained calm, steady. "Keep going. The babies must remain safe." The group continued, winding through alleys and abandoned buildings. Each step was tense. Every sound of distant gunfire made Vela's heart pound. But she began to notice something she had never felt before: hope. This human, with his strange ways and quiet courage, had given them hope when all seemed lost. Finally, they reached a hidden shelter deep underground. It was a place the raiders could not find easily. The human laid the babies gently on a soft surface, checking their breathing once more. They were still weak, but their chests rose and fell evenly. Vela sank to her knees, tears flowing freely. "They are alive. My babies are alive," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. The human smiled faintly. "They are strong. They will survive. But they need care, warmth, and patience. That is where you come in." Vela looked at him astonished. You saved them. You held them when we thought they were gone. How can you do this?" He shook his head. "Because life is precious, no matter who it is, no matter where you are from." Kieran, still tense, stepped closer. "We have never seen a human do this. They are legends, but this is more than we imagined." The human nodded. "Legends are only stories. Actions are what matter. These children, your children, they matter. That is why I am here." Hours passed as the human tended to the babies, adjusting their blankets, checking their warmth, and demonstrating simple techniques for feeding and calming them. Vela and Kieran watched and learned, slowly regaining their own strength and confidence. For the first time in the chaos of war, they felt that they could survive. Outside, the sounds of the raiders continued. Explosions echoed through the city, and fires burned in the distance. But inside the shelter there was peace. The human's calm presence created a space where life could continue, even in the midst of destruction. Vela placed a hand gently on the human's shoulder. You risked everything for them." "Why?" she asked. He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because someone must. Life is worth fighting for, always. And these children, they are the future. They deserve a chance." Kieran nodded slowly, understanding dawning. A human actually cares. Not just for their own, but for others too. Even for a species they do not know. The babies stirred, tiny hands reaching out. The human smiled and held them close again, cradling them as they drifted back to sleep. Vela watched, feeling a bond forming not just between the human and her children, but between her people and the humans they had once feared. Night fell over the city. Outside, the raiders prowled, unaware that their prize was slipping through their grasp. Inside, the human sat with the sleeping infants on his chest, their warmth seeping into his own body. Vela and Kieran stayed close, too tired to speak, but too aware of what they had witnessed to sleep. For the first time since the raiders had come, hope existed. Hope that life could continue. Hope that courage and care could survive even in the darkest moments. Hope that humans, legendary as they were, could teach the aliens something more than technology or strength, something deeper, the power of compassion and persistence. And as the night stretched on, the human remained there, holding the babies, guarding them against a universe that often seemed cruel. He did not rest. He simply waited, calm and patient, letting life grow stronger in his care. Vela whispered softly to her children, her voice trembling but full of gratitude. "They thought you were gone, but he saved you. A human. Saved my babies." The human, hearing her words, smiled faintly. He did not seek praise. His satisfaction came from the steady breaths of the infants, from knowing that he had given them a chance to live. In this small, hidden corner of a broken world, he had proven something the aliens would never forget, that humans were more than survivors. They were protectors, teachers, and bearers of hope. And so the night passed, quiet and still, with the human holding life in his hands, and the aliens beginning to understand that their world had changed forever. The sun rose over the broken city of Xyrith, casting long shadows over ruined buildings and scorched streets. Smoke curled from distant fires, reminders of the raiders' destructive power. But inside the hidden shelter, there was warmth. The human still sat with the Elyari babies cradled in his arms, their tiny bodies moving steadily with each breath. Vela and Kieran had not slept much. They had watched in awe all night as the human cared for their children with patience and skill. Now, with morning light spilling through cracks in the walls, they could see the truth. The babies were alive because of him. Every tiny movement, every flutter of their eyelids spoke of hope renewed. "You did this," Vela said softly, touching the human's arm. "You held them through the night. They would not have survived without you." The human gave a faint nod. "They are strong, but they need more than what I can give alone. You must help. I will teach you." Kieran stepped forward, cautious but curious. "Teach us. Teach us to save our children." "Yes," the human replied. "I will show you ways to keep them alive and healthy. You already have the knowledge of your world. I will add some of mine. Together, you can protect them better." Vela and Kieran exchanged a glance. It felt strange to follow a human, a being they had once only heard about in stories, but their babies' lives depended on it. And something about the calm confidence in his voice made them trust him. The human began by explaining the importance of warmth. He showed how to wrap the babies in soft blankets, how to keep their bodies close to another warm body, and how to monitor their breathing. Vela practiced, her hands shaking at first, but the human guided her gently. "Do not rush. Be patient. Babies feel your calmness. If you are afraid, they will sense it." Next, he demonstrated feeding techniques. The Elyari babies were too weak to feed themselves fully, so the human showed how to stimulate them gently to drink from small feeding tubes. Vela watched closely, trying to remember every movement. Kieran helped, holding the babies steady while the human instructed. Hours passed in this careful rhythm. Outside, the city remained dangerous. Raider scouts flew overhead, and distant explosions reminded everyone that their safety was temporary. But inside the shelter, life continued. Slowly, the babies grew stronger. Their tiny fingers twitched more, their cries were louder, and they responded to Vela and Kieran's voices. At one point, Vela asked, "Why do you care so much? We are not your people. We have never seen a human risk his life for us before." The human looked at her, eyes steady. "Life is life. No matter the species. If someone can be saved, it should be saved. That is what I was taught. And these children, they are the future. Every life matters. Kieran, who had been quiet, nodded slowly. You are not like anyone we have met. You do not fight for honor, or for profit, or for conquest. You fight to protect, for care. That is different. The human allowed a small smile. Different, yes, but effective. You will see. By midday, the human had taught the aliens how to monitor the baby's breathing, how to maintain warmth, and how to soothe them when they cried. He explained the importance of routine and how even small actions, done consistently, could make a huge difference in survival. Vela and Kieran absorbed every word, practicing each technique under his watchful eye. As they worked, the human also began to assess the shelter. He pointed out weaknesses in the structure, places where the raiders could enter, and safe spots where they could hide if another attack came. Vela and Kieran listened, realizing that the human was not only a healer but also a strategist. You think like a soldier, Kieran said, impressed, but you are not here to fight. You are here to protect life. Yes, the human replied. Fighting is only necessary when there is no other choice. The goal is always survival, for as many as possible. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the babies stirred. Vela clutched them instinctively. The human stood, keeping calm. That is a warning. They are coming closer. We must prepare. He organized the shelter quickly, placing blankets and pillows around the babies, creating safe zones, and explaining what to do if raiders entered. Vela and Kieran followed his instructions without hesitation. They realized that the human's presence brought order where chaos had ruled. Hours later, when the noise outside quieted, the human sat with the babies again. He cradled one in each arm, humming softly. His calmness was contagious, and even the exhausted Eliari began to feel hope rather than fear. Vela whispered, I never thought anyone could care like this. Not for us, not for our children. The human nodded. Humans are not perfect, but we have something valuable. We care. And sometimes that is enough to change a life or a whole world. As evening fell, the human suggested they rest, though only for a short time. Sleep is important. Babies need rest, and so do you. But keep them close, always within reach. Never let fear take control. Calmness protects life. Vela and Kieran lay down beside him, still holding the babies, feeling safer than they had in days. For the first time, they dared to believe they could survive this nightmare. That night, a quiet tension filled the shelter. The raiders were still out there, and the city outside was a battlefield. But the human's presence made it feel like a small world of safety. His calm voice guided them, his hands protected them, and his actions gave them hope. Vela watched the human carefully. He does not fear death, she whispered to Kieran. Not like we do. He makes it seem possible to survive, even here. Kieran nodded. It is not just courage. It is something more. Strength, compassion. I do not know, but it works. The babies, they live because of him. The human continued to teach them through the night. He showed them ways to make feeding easier, how to keep the babies clean and comfortable, and how to calm them when they were upset. Every small success filled the aliens with confidence. For the first time, they felt capable instead of helpless. Days passed. The babies grew stronger each hour. Their tiny hands grasped fingers, their eyes opened wider, and they responded to the voices of Vela, Kieran, and the human. The aliens began to trust him fully. They realized that the human's methods were not strange or alien. They were simply effective. One afternoon, while the human was adjusting blankets around the babies, Vela asked, "What made you come here? You could have stayed on your ship. You could have left us to die." The human looked at her, serious. "Because someone had to help. Someone had to be brave enough to care." Humans are taught to face danger, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what I do. Kieran swallowed hard. You risked your life for infants smaller than our hands. You could have died. I could have, the human admitted. But their lives mattered more than my safety. That is always the choice. Protect life if you can. That is the way forward. As they spoke, the babies stirred and reached toward the human. He held them closer, smiling faintly. They trust you, he said to Vela and Kieran. They feel safe because of your care and because they feel mine. That trust is precious. Never break it. The aliens nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of his words. They began to feel a sense of responsibility beyond fear or panic. They realized that survival depended not just on avoiding danger, but on caring for each other, learning from the human, and acting together. By the end of the week, the human had taught them all he could in the shelter. The babies were no longer fragile. They were strong, growing, and thriving. Vela and Kieran had learned techniques they never thought possible. They now held their children with confidence, even mimicking the human's calm manner. But peace was fragile. Scouts from the raiders had not given up, and the human knew another attack was coming. He prepared Vela and Kieran, showing them how to secure the shelter, how to watch for danger, and how to act quickly if the raiders returned. You have learned quickly, he said. Now you are ready, not just to survive, but to protect. Courage and knowledge together keep life safe. Vela and Kieran looked at him with gratitude. We owe you everything, Vela whispered. The human shook his head. You earned this. You protected your babies by learning. I only guided you, but together we made sure they lived. That is what matters. As night fell again, the shelter was quiet. The babies slept soundly, cradled in the arms of Vela, Kieran, and the human. Outside, the wind howled and distant explosions reminded them that the world was dangerous. But inside, they had hope, strength, and knowledge. The human stayed awake, watching the sleeping infants. He knew the next challenge would come soon. Raiders would return, and the aliens would need to defend themselves. But he also knew that they were no longer helpless. They had learned to protect life, to care, and to act with courage. And for the first time, the Eliari realized something remarkable. Humans were more than warriors, more than legends. They were teachers, protectors, and bearers of hope. Vela whispered softly as she watched the human. He has changed everything. Our babies, they live because of him. We will never forget this. The human did not need praise. His satisfaction came from the steady breathing of the infants, from the knowledge that life had been saved in a world that often seemed cruel. And so, another night passed on Xyrith. The babies slept, the aliens learned, and the human remained vigilant, ready for whatever danger would come next. In the darkness of war, a light of hope burned brightly, and the future looked a little stronger than before. The sun rose over the ruined city of Xyrith, but this day was different. The air was thick with tension. Scouts from the raiders had been seen in the distance. Fires burned on the outskirts, smoke curling into the sky, carrying the sound of distant explosions. The Eliari parents, Vela and Kieran, had learned much in the past days, but fear still lingered in their hearts. They had seen their children nearly die and survived by a miracle, guided by the human who had become their protector. The human stood at the entrance of the shelter, scanning the horizon. He held one of the babies in his arms while the other slept in a makeshift crib. His calm demeanor did not waver, though every sense of his being was alert to danger. He had taught the Eliari how to keep the children alive, how to monitor their breathing, and how to respond to fear. Now it was time to prepare for the fight they could no longer avoid. Vela approached him, concern written across her face. "They are coming closer," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The human nodded. "Yes, I can see them, but we are ready. You have learned quickly. Now, you will act with courage, not fear." Kieran shifted, his claws brushing the dusty floor. "I have never fought like this. I have never faced enemies with so little hope." "You have hope now," the human said. "You have the babies, you have each other, and you have me. That is more than most have when they face the raiders. Use it." Vela and Kieran looked at each other, seeing the truth in his words. The babies were asleep, breathing steadily, and that alone gave them strength. They would not let their children's lives be taken. Not again. Outside, the raiders advanced. Their ships hovered above the city, casting long shadows over the ruins. Patrols moved through the streets, searching for any survivors. Most of the city had been abandoned or destroyed, but the shelter remained hidden. The human had chosen the perfect location, but secrecy alone would not keep them safe. They needed strategy, courage, and quick thinking. The human turned to the Eliari. "Listen carefully. The raiders expect fear. They expect hesitation. Do not give it to them. Move only when I tell you. Stay close. Protect the babies at all costs. And remember what I taught you." Vela's heart pounded, but she nodded. "We are ready," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. The first group of raiders reached the edge of the shelter's entrance. They were armed with weapons designed to destroy buildings and crush anyone inside. But the human did not panic. He stepped forward, holding the baby in one arm, and extended his other hand. A pulse of energy shot from his suit, forcing the raiders to stumble backward. Their weapons fired, but the pulse disrupted their aim just enough to prevent serious injury. Kieran's eyes widened. How do you do that?" he asked. The human did not answer. There was no time. He led them deeper into the shelter, moving with precision and speed. Vela followed, carrying the other baby, while Kieran covered their rear. The raiders were relentless, but the human anticipated their moves. He had studied the terrain and used every advantage to protect the infants. As they moved through the shelter, the raiders split into two groups. One group tried to cut off their escape, while the other approached from above. The human signaled to Vela and Kieran. "Now, follow me, quickly." They reached a hidden corridor that led to a reinforced room. Inside, the babies were placed safely on soft blankets. The human checked their breathing. Both infants were calm, their tiny chests rising and falling steadily. He breathed a small sigh of relief. "We need to defend this position," he said. "And we need to make sure the raiders cannot find them. You will stay here with the babies. I will handle the attackers. Watch carefully and be ready to act if I call you." Vela and Kieran watched in awe as the human moved back toward the entrance. He did not carry weapons like theirs. Instead, he used tools and devices that emitted strange pulses of energy, disorienting the raiders and giving him the advantage. His movements were precise and controlled, each step calculated to protect the shelter and, most importantly, the babies. The raiders advanced again, firing their weapons recklessly. The human moved like a shadow, dodging blasts and countering their attacks. He knocked one raider off balance with a well-placed pulse, then used another device to temporarily disable the others. The Eliari watched, realizing that humans were not just strong, they were clever, resourceful, and fearless in ways they had never seen. Kieran whispered to Vela, "He is amazing. We cannot fight like that." Vela shook her head. "We do not need to. He is showing us how to survive. We must trust him." The fight continued for hours. The human used the shelter's design to his advantage, forcing the raiders into narrow corridors where their numbers counted for nothing. He set traps, using debris and energy pulses to block their advance. Each time the raiders seemed to gain an advantage, the human found a way to turn it against them. At one point, a raider fired directly at the room where the babies slept. The human leapt forward, deflecting the blast with a shield of energy, and moved the infants out of harm's way. Vela gasped, clutching the blankets that held her children. "You see," the human said calmly. "Every threat can be managed if you stay focused and act quickly. Fear will only slow you down." Hours passed. Exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone, but the human remained calm and steady. Vela and Kieran realized that his courage was contagious. They began to feel stronger, more confident. They were no longer helpless victims. They were participants in their own survival, guided by a being who seemed to embody both strength and compassion. Finally, the raiders began to retreat. They had underestimated the human and the determination of the Eliari parents. The shelter remained intact, the babies were safe, and for the first time, the humans and the Eliari shared a quiet sense of victory. The human returned to the room, setting the babies gently on the blankets. Vela and Kieran rushed forward, tears in their eyes. "They are safe," the human said softly. "For now. But remember what you have learned. You are capable. You are stronger than you think." Vela looked at him, awe and gratitude in her eyes. "You saved them. Again. You did not give up." "I never give up," the human replied. "Life is worth saving, no matter what. These children, they are the future. They deserve a chance." Kieran nodded, understanding dawning. "We have learned much from you, not just how to care for the babies, but how to face fear, how to survive." The human smiled faintly. "That is the most important lesson. Courage and knowledge together protect life. You now have both." That night, the shelter was quiet. The babies slept peacefully, cradled in the arms of their parents and the human who had become their protector. Outside, the city was still dangerous, but inside there was safety, learning, and hope. Vela whispered to the human, "You are not just strong, you are wise. You have changed everything for us." The human looked at her, calm and steady. "I only guided you. You protected your children. You learned. That is what matters. Together, we saved lives." Kieran placed a hand on the human's shoulder. "We will never forget this. You showed us what it means to protect life, to be brave in ways we never imagined." The human nodded. "Remember this feeling. The fear will come again, but so will courage. The babies are alive because you learned, because you acted. That is your power now." As the night stretched on, the human stayed awake, watching the babies and planning for the future. The raiders would return, and the city remained dangerous, but the Eliari parents were no longer helpless. They had learned from the human, absorbed his calm, and discovered the courage to protect their own. And in that quiet room, with the babies sleeping and the human keeping watch, the Eliari realized something remarkable. Humans were not just legends. They were teachers, protectors, and beacons of hope in the darkest moments. The future of Xyrith, once uncertain and fragile, now had a chance. Not because of luck, not because of fate, but because of courage, knowledge, and the unwavering determination of one human who refused to let life be lost. Vela whispered softly as she watched him. "He has changed our lives. Our babies. They live because of him. We will never forget this." The human did not seek praise. His satisfaction came from the steady breathing of the infants, from knowing that life had been preserved in a world that often seemed cruel. And as the night passed, hope burned brightly in the shelter, a small flame in a world of darkness, a symbol that courage and care could survive even against impossible odds. The morning light crept through the cracks of the shelter, illuminating the exhausted faces of Vela and Kieran. The past days had been long and terrifying. The raiders had tested them, and the human had taught them how to protect the babies, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to act with courage when fear threatened to overwhelm them. Now it was time for the next step, securing their home, their shelter, and their future. The human stood near the entrance, watching the horizon. One baby rested in his arms, the other beside him on a soft blanket. His presence had become a constant reassurance, a shield of calm and strength for the Eliari parents. "We need to fortify this shelter," he said, his voice steady. "The raiders will return. They think we are weak, but we are not. Today we make sure they cannot surprise us again." Vela and Kieran nodded, determination shining in their eyes. They had learned much, but today they would apply it. For the first time, they felt that survival was not just possible, it was within their control. The human led them through the shelter, pointing out weak points in the structure. "This wall is unstable," he said, touching the cracked surface. "If they attack here, it could collapse. We need to reinforce it with debris, with what we have. Every piece counts." Kieran surveyed the area. "We can do that. We have materials. But will it be enough?" "It will be," the human replied. "Because you are not alone. Together we are stronger than they expect." Vela gathered blankets, metal pieces, and stones, stacking them to reinforce the walls. Kieran followed her lead, carefully placing debris to block entrances and create narrow paths that could be defended. The human moved calmly among them, instructing, guiding, and demonstrating. Every action had a purpose. Every movement mattered. Hours passed. The shelter slowly transformed from a fragile refuge into a fortified haven. The babies were kept safe in a secure corner, wrapped in layers of blankets. Their breathing was steady, and they began to respond more to the voices of Vela, Kieran, and the human. Each tiny movement, each blink of their eyes reminded everyone why they were working so hard. Finally, the human stood back and observed the progress. "Good," he said. "Now, we prepare for defense. You will not just hide here. You will protect your home, your family. You have the knowledge. You have courage. You have each other." Vela swallowed, her throat tight. "We will try. But what if they come in force?" "They will come," the human said. "But we will be ready. Remember what I taught you. Calmness, focus, strategy. We act, not panic, and we protect life first." As evening approached, scouts from the raiders were spotted at a distance. Their engines hummed low, almost like a warning. The human led Vela and Kieran to watch from hidden vantage points. "Observe them," he instructed. "They move fast, but they are predictable. Use that to your advantage. Knowledge is power." Vela and Kieran watched closely, noticing patterns in the raiders' movement. They realized that the human had taught them to see not just danger, but opportunity. With careful observation, they could anticipate attacks and act before the raiders could strike. Night fell. The raiders approached the shelter in force, confident that they could overwhelm the small group inside. But they had underestimated one crucial element the human and the Eliari parents had prepared. As the raiders reached the shelter entrance, the human signaled to Vela and Kieran. "Now, remember your training. Protect the babies. Stay calm. Move together." They moved as one, following the human's lead. The fortified walls forced the raiders into narrow passages. Energy pulses from the human's devices slowed their advance, while debris traps made their movements awkward. Vela and Kieran held positions they had practiced, guiding the raiders into controlled areas where they could be managed without risk to the infants. A raider managed to break through one side, rushing toward the room where the babies slept. The human reacted instantly, intercepting the attacker with precision. Using a small device, he deflected the raiders' path harmlessly into a corner, preventing harm to the shelter and the infants. Vela's hands shook, but she remembered the human's instructions. She positioned herself near the corridor, ready to block another raider if necessary. Kieran covered the rear, steadying his nerves and controlling his fear. Hours of careful defense passed. The raiders were frustrated, confused, and unable to adapt to the coordinated tactics of the human and the Eliari. Every move was deliberate. Every pulse of energy, every barricade, every diversion was calculated. The babies remained safe, and the parents began to feel the first glimmers of confidence. Finally, the raiders began to retreat, realizing that the shelter could not be taken easily. Their weapons fired less accurately, their morale dropping. The human gave a nod, signaling that the immediate danger had passed. Vela rushed to the infants, holding them close. "They are safe," she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Yes," the human said calmly, "and remember, this was not luck. It was preparation, courage, and teamwork. You learned, you acted. That is why they live." Kieran placed a hand on the human's shoulder. "You showed us what it means to fight without hatred, without revenge, only to protect life. That is more powerful than any weapon." The human smiled faintly. "Protection is strength. Courage is strength. Knowledge applied is strength. You have all of these now. The babies are alive because of it. You are alive because of it." Over the following days, the human continued to teach the Eliari. He showed them how to reinforce weak points, how to observe enemy patterns, and how to act decisively under pressure. Vela and Kieran practiced constantly, gradually gaining confidence. Each day, the babies grew stronger, smiling faintly, reaching for their parents, responding to voices with tiny coos. The Eliari parents began to understand that the human had given them more than survival skills. He had given them courage, knowledge, and hope. They were no longer helpless. They were participants in their own protection. They were guardians of life. One morning, Vela turned to the human. "We will be ready if they come again, not just to survive, but to fight if necessary." The human nodded. "That is the right attitude. Fear paralyzes, courage empowers. Protecting life is not passive. You act, you lead, you defend." Kieran, watching his children play quietly on soft blankets, smiled. "We have learned from the best. We can face anything now because we know how to care, how to protect, and how to act with courage." The human placed a hand gently on the babies. "Remember, this is only the beginning. Life is precious. Protect it always, and teach others when you can. That is how strength spreads." Days turned into weeks. The shelter became a haven. The Eliari parents grew more confident, caring for their children with skill and calm. The human remained vigilant, observing the city, ready for any threat. Yet his presence was no longer intimidating. It was reassuring. Vela and Kieran had learned to move with him, to act with him, and to carry the same calm courage that he demonstrated. Eventually, the raiders stopped returning. Word spread that the shelter was defended, that the human and the Eliari parents were not easy targets. The babies thrived, growing stronger each day, their eyes bright and curious. The parents held them close, confident in their ability to protect them. One quiet evening, Vela whispered to the human, "You have changed everything, not just for the babies, but for us. We will never forget what you taught us." The human looked at her, calm and steady. "You learned, you acted, you protected life. That is more important than anything I could do. Courage and care will carry you further than I ever could. You now hold that power." Kieran nodded. "We will teach it to others. We will protect life as you have shown us. The babies, they will grow in a world that has hope because of what you did." The human's eyes softened as he watched the infant sleep peacefully. That is all anyone can ask for. Life preserved, courage learned, hope carried forward. As night fell over Xyrath, the shelter glowed softly with light from small lamps and the warmth of shared determination. The babies slept soundly, cradled in blankets and arms that had learned to care and protect. Vela and Kieran watched over them with pride and newfound strength, and the human, ever vigilant, stood nearby. Knowing that his mission was complete, not because of himself, but because the Eliari had learned to protect, to act with courage, and to carry hope forward. In the war-torn world of Xyrath, one human had shown that courage, knowledge, and compassion could create safety, inspire strength, and preserve life. The Eliari parents had learned not only how to survive, but how to thrive. And in the hearts of the babies, who cooed softly in their sleep, the future looked bright. Hope had returned to Xyrath, and it burned brighter than any fire the raiders could set.